Why did God reject Saul's kingship, but not David's? David committed serious behavioral sins, adultery, murder, yet he was forgiven by God and his reign as king continued. Saul committed no behavioral sins like David, and yet his kingship was ended by God. Why was Saul rejected and not David? David, an adulterer, a murderer, was called by Yahweh a man after Yahweh's heart, yet Yahweh states that he regrets making Saul king. What gives? Why was Saul rejected and not David? Well, the question regarding one king being rejected and the other not being rejected is intriguing. And the answer as to why God rejects Saul and yet doesn't reject David reveals a very important theological truth. And to find the answer, we're going to need to start with the prophet Samuel's farewell address to the nation of Israel. In his last address, Samuel challenges the people to be loyal to Yahweh. Do not be afraid. You've done all this evil, yet do not turn aside from following the Lord, but serve the Lord with all your heart, and do not turn aside after empty things that cannot profit or deliver, for they are empty. Loyalty or faithfulness to Yahweh was a central priority. Israel was coming out of the period of the judges when the nation was repeatedly unfaithful, and it was moving into the period of the monarchs, the kings. And the prophet Samuel has anointed Saul as the very first king of Israel. In chapter 13, we read that Saul, now king of Israel, is preparing to go to battle against the Philistines. He is waiting for Samuel to arrive before he attacks the Philistines, but Samuel is delayed in coming. And this delay causes the people, Saul's army, to scatter. Saul's soldiers are deserting, so Saul decides to offer the burnt offering to offset this exodus of soldiers. Saul said, "Bring the burnt offering here to me, and the peace offerings." And he offered the burnt offering. Now, shortly after Saul offers this burnt offering, guess who arrives? Well, Samuel shows up, and he's wanting to know just what it is that Saul has done. And Saul tells Samuel that he was concerned that his men were abandoning the cause due to Samuel's delay, so he offered the burnt offering to obtain Yahweh's favor. And Samuel's response to Saul's sacrifice is shocking. Listen to what he says to Saul. "You have done foolishly. You have not kept the command of the Lord your God, with which he commanded you. For then the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom shall not continue." What did Saul do that caused Samuel to make this pronouncement? Your kingdom shall not continue. What happened? Saul has just been anointed the first king of Israel, and now his reign is done. It's over before it really even gets started. And when you read commentaries about this rejection of Saul, the scholars will generally state that Saul should have waited for Samuel to sacrifice the burnt offering. These scholars will tell you that Samuel should have been the one to sacrifice because Samuel was a priest. But there's a problem. Samuel was not technically a priest. He was an Ephraimite in the Levitical line, but he was not directly in the Aaronic line. And there is a priest in this story. His name is Ahijah, and he could have offered the sacrifice. But this particular sacrifice that Saul offered was not a Levitical sacrifice. You do not read about this in the book of Leviticus. This would have been what was known as a divine patronage sacrifice, a sacrifice that was offered in preparation for war. The one making the sacrifice is asking the deity to provide protection or favor in the coming battle. This particular sacrifice was often offered by those who were not priests. You read in the Bible of Gideon, David, Solomon, Jeroboam, and various kings offering this type of sacrifice. And what is interesting is that none of these individuals were called out for offering this particular sacrifice. So something is amiss to say that Saul lost his kingship because he should have waited for Samuel to offer the sacrifice. There are way too many examples of others who were not priests, and they offered those sacrifices, and they were never rejected. This then begs the question, what exactly did Saul do that caused him to lose his kingship? Well, what we need to do at this point is to look ahead in the story, and we need to see if there are any hints as to what the issue might be as to why Saul was severely reprimanded by Samuel and thus forfeited his kingship. In 1 Samuel chapters 14 and 15, Saul is going to win two battles. The first is against the Philistines with the aid of his son Jonathan. And the second battle is against the Amalekites and their king Agag. And it's in context of this second battle that some revealing details emerge. Following Saul's victory over King Agag and the Amalekites, some interesting facts do come to light as to why Saul had a serious problem when he offered the sacrifice before Samuel arrived. Something that Saul says to Samuel gives the reader a clue to the problem. 3 times in 1 Samuel 15, we read Saul making an interesting statement. He says, Yahweh, our Elohim. This is a statement you would expect Saul to make. The Elohim, or the God of both Samuel and Saul, would be Yahweh. Yahweh, our Elohim. In the book of Psalms, the phrase Yahweh, my Elohim, or Yahweh, our Elohim, is used 85 times. And David uses this phrase as if it was the only thing he knew to say. It was consistently coming out of his mouth. For instance, here's David following his deliverance from his enemies, and he's declaring to God, "For it is you who lights my lamp. Yahweh, my Elohim, lightens my darkness." Or again, here is David voicing a prayer of protection for the people of Israel before an impending battle. Some trust in chariots, some in horses, but we trust in the name of Yahweh, our Elohim. This phrase, Yahweh, my Elohim, or Yahweh, our Elohim, falls from David's lips repeatedly. But there is a serious problem when it comes to Saul and this phrase, Yahweh, our Elohim. Saul did not actually say, Yahweh, my Elohim, nor did he ever say, Yahweh, our Elohim, when he was confronted by Samuel. Saul actually said something very different. I'm going to read to you 3 times what Saul said to Samuel when confronted with his disobedience regarding what he should have done to the Amalekites. And I want you to pay careful attention to his wording regarding Yahweh. And when you do, you're going to get some clues as to why his kingship was rejected. When asked by Samuel about why he hears the bleating of sheep that should have been killed, Saul says this, "They have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice to Yahweh, your God, and the rest we have devoted to destruction." But Samuel's not accepting Saul's explanation, so Saul blames the people. "But the people took of the spoil, sheep and oxen, the best of things devoted to destruction, to sacrifice to Yahweh, your God, in Gilgal." And when passing the buck did not work, Saul finally takes responsibility for his actions. "I have sinned. Yet honor me now before the elders of my people, before Israel, and return with me, that I may bow before Yahweh your God. Did you catch it? Saul never says Yahweh our Elohim. Saul's actual words are Yahweh your Elohim. 3 times Saul says to Samuel's face, Yahweh your Elohim. Saul never claims Yahweh as his Elohim, his God. And here is a fact that is devastating to Saul. The biblical text never states that Saul says the words Yahweh our Elohim or even Yahweh my Elohim. Unlike David, who repeated these phrases regularly, Saul never does. You never once read in 1 Samuel of Saul openly claiming that Yahweh is his Elohim, his God. When it comes to Saul stating clearly that Yahweh is his deity, the Bible is silent. And to make matters worse, it needs to be pointed out what Yahweh told Samuel before Saul openly said to Samuel, Yahweh your Elohim. God told Samuel this, I regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned back from following me and has not performed my commandments. God is saying that Saul has rejected him. Saul has rebelled against Yahweh and wants nothing to do with him. Saul has turned his back from following Yahweh, and this is a serious cause of disloyalty. And when Saul will then later say to Samuel 3 times, Yahweh your Elohim, well, Yahweh's charge of Saul's disloyalty is proven to be true. And one more thing that is revealing to this serious situation concerning Saul. The Bible records that after Saul had learned that his kingdom would not continue, he did something in front of the people of Israel. He built an altar. Saul built an altar to the Lord. It was the first altar that he built to the Lord. This historical fact is most revealing. If this is the first altar that Saul built to Yahweh, then what did he build earlier back in chapter 13 when he sacrificed the burnt offering before Samuel arrived? What kind of altar was built for this sacrifice that caused God to reject his kingship? Well, the truth is the Bible doesn't tell us. We don't know. But my sense is that Saul was making a sacrifice to another deity. We don't know who or what that deity is, but we do know it was not Yahweh. And now we can understand why Saul was rejected by Yahweh, even though his behavior was not anywhere as egregious as David's. Saul never committed adultery. Saul never murdered an innocent. Yet, unlike David, he was rejected by God. Why? Saul was unfaithful. Saul was not loyal to Yahweh. And this disloyalty is something we never read regarding David. Not once through David's entire life does the Bible ever record that David was disloyal or unfaithful to Yahweh. Yes, his behavior at times was atrocious, but David's faithfulness, his loyalty to Yahweh, it was rock solid. Why did God reject Saul's kingship and not David's? Saul was not loyal to Yahweh, but David's loyalty never wavered. Well, I hope this has been helpful as we've looked at these 2 kings, one that was rejected by God and the other that was accepted. One king who never committed the egregious sins that the other king did, yet this king was rejected, Saul. Why? Because he was disloyal to Yahweh. He was unfaithful to Yahweh. Yet David, whose behavior at times was not good at all, never ever wavered in his loyalty to Yahweh. And this is a significant fact, because the thing that God is looking for in all of us is our faithfulness to Him. It says in the very beginning that Abraham believed the Lord, and the Lord accounted it or credited it to him as righteousness. In other words, this is right. Abraham shifted his loyalty to Yahweh. And people, this is why the writer of Hebrews makes it so clear. Without faith, without faithfulness, without loyalty, it is impossible to please God. And David was loyal, but Saul was not. Well, listen, thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video. And if it was helpful in any way, please hit the like button. And if you've not yet subscribed to this channel, let me encourage you to do so as well. And again, it's always so encouraging to me to hear your comments, different things you say, the different insights that you have, whatever they may be. And if so, share them in the comment section below. And as always, let me just conclude with my favorite line: God's very best to you.